You're listening to 87.1 Caroline Radio, KCGN Bakersfield, and Blind Advocate Radio. Welcome back, listener. How are you doing today? I'm glad you had a good week. I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there. This is Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we talk about issues in the blindness community. This podcast can be heard anywhere, almost anywhere you get your podcast, along with YouTube, and Twitter and all of that. Follow us there. Follow us basically everywhere. I'm very proud to say that also you can follow Aaron's Opinion on Patreon. If you want more info, send me a message. Anyway, we are, for the second time today, we're speaking to someone from the UK, specifically a man from London, England, a city I've been to once. By the way, I lived in England for 3 months. I love England. It's a great place. His name is Harry Mallett, and he would like to speak to you about several things, but I want to give him as much time as possible for him to talk about his interest and his work that he's doing for a startup in London that, well, helps blind people. Harry, when I read your post on Facebook and when I saw this information on Twitter, I was a little confused. And from an American perspective, I don't have enough information to know exactly what the company does. So why don't you start from the beginning? I'll mute my microphone and tell us all about everything. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my name's Harry, and I think I've just finished my second year of university doing like a sports marketing course, and I was looking for like internships and different things to do. And I think we got like an email from our university about, I think Ishan, who sort of owns the startup, he messaged about, I guess, getting an intern to do like digital marketing and take over social media. And the company is still, it hasn't finished yet. But yes, it's VIP World Services, so it's visually impaired people world, which is a company that designs solutions for visually impaired people across the world. And the app that's been in development before COVID-19, and that's hopefully going to go into development after COVID-19, is called Travel Hands, which is an app which helps visually impaired people with verified volunteers to walk safely to their destinations. I think obviously at the minute it's only sort of being tried and tested in London, but I don't know whether with expansions they'll be able to go to different places. But that's the I guess strong idea at the minute of what the app is. That's sort of the simplified version of events really. But
Got it. I think so. From an American perspective, I think that it is both an interesting concept, and I also think it's a concept that would not really work very well in the States. In general, blind people in the States either tend to depend on their immediate family, or they depend on friends, or they use public transportation. I don't see blind people using this service in the United States. I would have some reservations and some concerns about it. I'm not terribly sure that blind people in America would be comfortable with this, with just having a stranger, stand next to them and walk them to a destination. Blind people in America would say that that's kind of not what we would consider to be socially acceptable in many cases. But have you tried this app or this service or this program in London, and what have the results been so far?
Yes, I think it's been tried and tested in London before COVID-19 sort of all kicked off. But I don't know too much about how it went before that. But I think there has been sort of quite a lot of good reviews and quite a lot of good responses from that. Cause I think from like some of the data we've received from it was sort of like in London, volunteers volunteer for like 12.6 hours per week, and I think their sort of I guess problem with that with bid volunteering was that there was a lack of flexibility in their work. So with the Travel Hands app, in that I guess walking people to their destination is only like a 10-minute I guess it's like short journeys, because I think visually impaired people in London anyway, I think they have a free, like some sort of travel card, which means they get free public transport. But then before, well, I guess a lot of visually impaired people at the minute would, who aren't comfortable maybe walking in public, especially in London, which is quite a congested part of the UK, being like a massive city. I think they'd have to get a taxi, which I think for 2 miles, I think it's £2.50. So I think over a month, transportation costs of that sort of add up to on an average of about £40. So then with this app, in walking with someone, to that, making that short trip, that would sort of, I guess, slash their costs that they're paying to go to get to public transport, and they'll be able to talk with a volunteer, walk, I guess, keep fit and healthy, and talk to someone who's willing to help. And I guess the volunteer will be able to volunteer and fit it around their work as well. I guess it's not a massive chunk of their day they have to work around. I guess with it being a little 10-minute walk destination, they can sort of work it into their day, and it's quite flexible. So I think with the volunteers, they can fit it into their day. And I guess with the visually impaired person, it's something that enables them to keep fit, keep walking. I guess can save money in the long run as well. And perhaps they can talk to a volunteer and get to know them, and who knows where that goes. They can sort of form a relationship there of friendship or something. So I think it sort of, I guess, has a lot of different aspects to it as well, of sort of bringing the community together and keeping fit and healthy, I think.
Cool, mate. Yeah, I get it. And what does your company do as far as the vetting process for a volunteer? You know,
Mhm.
I've been working online for 5 years as a teacher. I teach English as a second language. I work for Company X, as I call it. Before I joined Company X, I had to send in some credentials, put together a video, nice to meet you type of thing. So how do you know what? And I think it's a fascinating concept. But our listeners, especially American ones, would want to know, well, if I'm using this app, how can I trust the volunteer? After all, in America, there have been many great experiences with Uber drivers, but there's also been a lot of problems with Uber drivers and a lot of problems with these types of apps and organizations as it relates to finding people who, quite frankly, have the heart and have the maturity to do the task properly. So what can you tell me about the process, the application process, and the vetting?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the how the application process works, but all volunteers are verified volunteers. I guess they'd all have certain checks that need to be done, and like DBS checks and whatnot, to make sure that they have the right intentions as well. And that'll all go through Ishan and through the company, so they are the right people. But yeah, of course, that is a concern. I think in probably certain parts of the UK or certain parts of the world, different people have obviously the wrong intentions. But yeah,
Well,
all people.
and as right, and on top of all of that, having someone, I'm not saying it in any way to be personal. I'm not. I mean, this is nothing personal, but in America, it would not be considered socially appropriate to have a stranger walking next to you and showing you where to walk, because then other people around you would think, if you're a blind person, they would think that you're not capable.
Yeah, okay, I understand that point. Yeah, I
So
think it's more just
right. No, I get it. I totally get it. I think it's a really interesting concept, and useful to many degrees. So let's say that the sighted person, okay, gets kind of a request like Uber, right? They see well, of course, I lived in Norwich for 3 months at UEA, University East Anglia. But um, let's say there is a hotel, and let's say there's a restaurant. Let's say there's an Indian restaurant. No pun intended, but there are many wonderful Indian restaurants in England. Actually, the Indian restaurants are the best restaurants in England. So let's say a blind person is at their hotel. Let's imagine they're at, I don't know, King George Hotel, and they want to go to the Indian restaurant. So, how does the sighted person know the route, and how does the sighted person know the fastest way to walk there?
Yeah, again, that's sort of like a difficult question for me. I'm not too much working on the app side of things, but yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
sure how that sort of process work personally.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I've not
So
answered your question.
sure, sure. Fine, fine, Harry. So specifically, what are you tasked with doing in this company? What do you do?
It's more on the social media side. So I think Ishan, of course, having the idea and the concepts. Yeah, I guess having to start with one person, I guess it's difficult to get the idea out and get the word out. And I guess before, when I sort of looked at marketing and looked at startups and how people do sort of think, oh, that could be quite easy about making posts and posting content and getting the word out. But I think, yeah, there are quite a lot of people, I guess, working on different social media platforms and contacts of people kind of yeah, content to generally build up the social media platforms. I guess just generate a general awareness of the app or the concept and whether other people would be willing to be a part of it, or people think it's a good concept, a bad concept, and whether people would want to I guess participate with it really.
Right, right. Cool, cool, mate. Has have you received, has anyone else made the comment that I made about maybe a blind person? Have they ever said anything to your company on social media about maybe they don't want a sighted person walking them? Have you received, I mean, as you can tell, I support the idea, Harry, but I'm also puzzled by it. So I'm wondering if any other blind people have raised any apprehension about all of this.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything on social media yet in terms of the comments of the group pages I've been yeah, working on. I haven't seen many people having a problem with that, but I can of course understand that. I think yeah, I can understand people being a bit, I guess, wary of someone they don't know that they've never met before, meeting with them
Yeah.
and then walking them somewhere. I guess, but yeah, I can understand that being a
Yeah, I
strange
mean, look,
concept. Yeah.
it's a really uh, and the sad truth or the reality of our world today is that the startups that you're working for, it's a wonderful company. It's a great company. I support the company. I agree. The problem is that a lot of startups around the world have a great idea, but as far as, putting it down on the paper, and as we say in American English, where they're making the rubber meet the road, that's where you tend to that's where all companies like this all around the world would tend to, in general, lose some traction, some friction, so that would be kind of what I would tell you about that. I mean, I've participated with Travelize. Have you done any holidays with them?
No, not Travelers. No,
Do you know what it is?
no, I've never heard of Travelers. No,
You've never heard of it?
Travelers. No, is that an American thing or is it?
No, no, it's in your
No.
country, mate. It's in
Oh right.
Leeds.
Oh right.
And
No.
and as an American,
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
speak very highly for this particular
Yeah.
British company. So because of your work that you're doing for this company, you might want to research it. You might find it
Hmm.
interesting. It's a chance for you to go on a vacation all over the world, basically anywhere. They create a group of usually about 20 people, 10 blind people, 10 VIs, as they say, or 10 sighted people, and 10 sighted people, and you have an action-packed itinerary. It's really cool. I've been on an Amsterdam trip. I've been to Swaziland with them, and my brother and I went on a trip. One of the last trips before we had to stop traveling was a riverboat cruise down the Danube in mostly Germany. So yeah, that would be a similar type organization where basically all of a sudden, a blind person has to trust a sighted person very, very quickly. Um, and basically, you have to trust a stranger very quickly. The difference is that with Travelize can be quite expensive, and every quid is worth it. But some of the trips are more costly than others. So when you put the two together, you end up with a group of people that truly has good intentions and truly wants to be there. You should check it out. They're
Hmm.
in Leeds.
I know, I definitely will. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm always puzzled by that. A lot of British people haven't heard of it. It's a major, major, major company. Major. In fact, they won the most an award for the most accessible British tour company. They're like
Yeah.
yeah, the yeah, it's really interesting. I tell you, Harry, the blind people in the States for many reasons, really do not do a whole lot of traveling.